Hey, this is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. It is August 26th, Thursday, 2021. And the news that we're looking at today, again, it's still Afghanistan. We're still working on this. But the issue has become very, very apparent. And if anybody saw anything about the stranded arguments that occurred over the last couple of days, it personifies, or I guess is indicative of exactly how bad this problem is that obviously Afghanistan is difficult, right? Nobody would disagree with that. It's a difficult situation. It's very complex. What makes it significantly more difficult with this administration is the lack of information, or the spin of the information, and everybody talking out of both sides of their mouths and doing different things, and no cohesiveness in the message. You have Jen Psaki saying one thing, you have Joe Biden saying one thing, you have the State Department saying another, you have Anthony Blinken saying even more, and none of them match up, and they all sort of feel a little bit CYA. And this all came to a head a little bit with the stranded language, when a reporter asked, what are we going to do with Americans that are stranded in Afghanistan? And there was intense pushback, like, we would not call them stranded, if they just need to get in touch with us, we will get them. Even though the State Department has issued statements saying, hey, it's too dangerous at the airport, don't go to the airport. And the White House has said, if you can get to the airport, we can get you out. So you see how that messaging is extraordinarily complicated and super difficult to understand what anybody wants. We also have a lot of Americans that have not made it out of the country yet. And with an August 31st deadline, a hard deadline that the Taliban has set up and Joe Biden said okay to. Technically, Joe Biden started it and the Taliban agreed to it, and is now doubling down on that hold. It's not going to happen. The G7 allies asked Joe Biden to extend that deadline because they need to get people out also. Joe Biden said no, which means that because they're relying on our military for the security element of it, the G7 allies have to start getting people out today and tomorrow. That's really it. And then they've got to start pulling out altogether, because we're going to be pulling out our people, and then we're going to be pulling out our military a couple of days beforehand also. It's all breaking down. So if it doesn't happen in the next 24 hours, it's probably not going to happen for a lot of those folks. And the fact that Joe Biden told them no to stick with some arbitrary deadline is a major problem. It's a problem of thought. It's a problem of consideration. It's just a problem of having any sort of guts at all when it comes to dealing with the Taliban. A Taliban that we have significantly helped to become a much stronger power than they should have been before. I heard somebody mention this, and it's debilitating in its truthfulness, but the Taliban is stronger now than they were before the war started. And that's not the way that wars are supposed to start out. That's not, or finish. It's a massive loss. It's huge numbers of vehicles, huge numbers of combat capability, attack aircraft, weapons, ammo. Just, this is one of the best outfitted militaries in the world now, because of all the stuff that we just surrendered to them. And for some reason, Joe Biden is seemingly willing to surrender even more in American lives, in allies' lives. It's a mess. Couple that with the fact that the State Department has also issued a statement saying that ISIS is operating in and around the airport, so they don't want anybody in that region. And the threat level apparently has gone all the way up from not even possible, but to more likely than not that there will be a terror attack around the airport on civilians and on allies of the United States and Afghans that are working for the United States, which there are still 250,000 in Kabul. This is just an incredible mess, and it could all be figured out immediately. And I think this is the issue that has come from Joe Biden, and essentially being a policy failure, a foreign policy failure his entire life. He's just always been wrong. If Joe Biden bets one way on a foreign policy issue, just go the other way. Odds are you'll be okay. This is just another in that long line. The problem is it is such a disastrous failure, not only for our international allies, but also for the region, for Afghanistan, for Pakistan, for any dealings with China, for Russia. Like, all of these issues are all going to come to a head because of this failure in policy. And it's a policy failure that didn't have to happen. I think that's what's so difficult to deal with also, is that there was nothing pushing this idea. There was a pact with Trump made that was also equally terrible, but not acted upon, that created this. But Joe Biden's been overturning Trump era agreements since he got into office, like the Iran agreement. He wants to jump back in, the Paris Climate Accord, and he wants to jump back in. Like all of these things that Trump did, he's been undoing. But for some reason, he had to stick strong to, and had to come up with an arbitrary deadline, and wanted everybody out by the 20th anniversary of September 11th, which makes no sense. It's a symbolic date that doesn't correspond with what you're actually accomplishing, or what you're doing or trying to accomplish, which is getting out of Afghanistan. Like that's not a good thing. You don't want it to be on that date. It's meaningless. It's seemingly, and I don't want to think the worst of him, but it's seemingly set up just as a PR play and not as any codified, thoughtful, well-executed plan that includes the buy-in of our intelligence communities, of our military communities, all of which said, don't do it. And he did it anyway. And that's why it's getting harder and harder to believe that Joe Biden isn't either one, extraordinarily incompetent and incapable of doing the job, or two, intentionally disregarding all the facts because he has a political agenda that he needs to seize upon. Neither one of those are good. I don't know that either one is preferred, but it's not a good place for Joe Biden to be in. And the only positive that can be drawn from it is at least now people know, and maybe won't make the same mistake again. Thank you. This is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. News every day, analysis every day. We'll talk a little bit probably from conservative tilt, but you'll get little tidbits and morsels of what you're going to need for the day, the things that people are going to be talking about. If you have any questions, any comments, definitely leave those down below. If you want to get more of this, subscribe to the channel, hit me up anytime, and we will continue doing this every day. Thank you.